Hi, I'm Nolan Chambers, and for our last discussion this week in class, we're talking about stadium financing and kind of how the idea of public versus private financing works and the differences that may be, and kind of the fact that ultimately it leads to a lot of controversy and some support it, well as it seems like more and more frequently now it's being fighted and kind of can be tougher to actually get the public to get behind that and get the taxpayer dollars you need to make these stadiums. So ultimately, in my first source, I found that only 3 stadiums in the NFL are currently privately funded and entirety. Would be San Francisco and New York are 2 of them, and the third one would be in Foxborough for the Patriots. So ultimately, this is something that you really can't get away from, and the vast majority, it's almost every stadium, you have to have some level of public support. And an example of a successful one is the new Buffalo Bills Stadium, Highmark Field. So this one is going to be the largest public subsidy ever at $850 million going from the public rather than private or anything like that. So they clearly had support, and I think one of the reasons why that this has been so successful is that the Bills have been able to work closely with the county and the government in the state, and ultimately the mayor of Buffalo is a native of Buffalo and a fan of the team and has been for years. So I think that alone helps, and it gets you kind of in the door and leaves you in a good spot to start with. Another thing that has helped them is that while a lot of it is going to come straight from taxpayer, they have been offering bonds. They're calling them Bills bonds, and it requires a minimum purchase of $5,000, but it basically gets you in the door, and they're offering to their own fans before they go and seek private money and people that actually want to just and get their money in the door currently, and they're not fans and have no ties to the team. So I think by asking the fans first and getting them interested and trying to get them on board, I think that does go a long way. And ultimately, while they're still just asking them for money, it makes them feel a little bit more important and like they're a part of something. And I think the Bills, in a place like Buffalo, where it seems to be the fan base is very united and loyal, and ultimately it's a place where they don't have a ton of major sports teams. Obviously, they have the Sabres in the NHL, and they're close enough to New York City that in the state of New York where they have some other teams they can root for, but in reality, this is their team and they care about them, and I think making them feel important and trying to get them involved is a good move, and it's working for them, and clearly the taxpayers aren't as upset about it, or at least weren't upset about it enough to make it not go through. So I think that's something that worked, and I think the idea of the bonds and trying to get a return on investment later is something worth exploring for sure. And then next up, for one that has not exactly been as successful as the Chicago Bears. So I'm a Bears fan, and the Bears have been looking for a new stadium for the better part of the last 3-4 years now, and it seems to continue to stall out and never make very much progress. And I think a large part of that is that the government in the state of Illinois is kind of working against the team in a sense, and not working against them because ultimately it's up to them to make these decisions, but they're not helping the team out, and it's been repeated over and over again that they do not want public money to be involved in this decision and the funding of the stadium. And they've talked at length about the fact that ultimately there's more important issues that the people in the government believe. And there was a quote in one of the sources I found that said ultimately they're focused on the price of groceries and the price it costs to live and things like that, and they don't want their people in their state to have to worry about paying for a stadium. They think that should be kind of at the low end of the list in terms of importance. So I think that's definitely the other side of this, and while I'm sure there's plenty of Bears fans that want a new stadium and are people in Illinois that are excited about the possibility, but at the end of the day, it's not enough for a lot of these government officials to make it seem like a priority, and that's something that is becoming the issue as this continues to go on. As in the past, this has really not been possible to do without public money, but now people are trying to make it happen without it because there's just so many other things that are worth spending your money on, and government officials trying to get these bills passed are having a really hard time getting support from the actual taxpayers because they don't really want to support it on a large scale. So I think it's interesting to see how it'll go forward and how a team like the Bears, who have been in these talks for so long, how it'll turn out. I'm sure at some point, my guess would be it ends up with some form of public money being involved in subsidies, but I guess we will wait and see. So yeah, thank you.